The words fell like shards of glass onto the polished mahogany table, and for a moment the world held its breath. The clinking of forks on fine china ceased. My father, who had been laughing a second before, froze with a piece of roasted chicken halfway to his mouth. My sister Anne, a perfect vision in her new silk dress, simply smiled, a smug, small curve of her lips that I had come to know all too well. I was 28, a ghost in my own family. And that evening, my mother, looking at me with a cold sneer I have seen 1,000 times before, declared the truth of my existence. "You'll never be as good as your sister," she said, her voice a low, precise cut. "Anne has ambition, she has drive, she's going somewhere in life." I should have been used to it. I was Mary, the invisible daughter, the one who navigated life's currents on her own while my parents built a gilded lifeboat for Anne. My reality was the relentless rhythm of an ICU nurse, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the frantic beeping of machines, the fleeting moment of triumph when a life was saved, a victory celebrated only by my exhausted colleagues. My weekends were spent tutoring strangers' children just to pay down student loans that seemed to mock my every effort. My parents, meanwhile, celebrated Anne's new marketing job with a full production, a home-cooked meal, fine wine, and glowing praise for a career that paid a fraction of what mine did. It was all a performance, and I was the stagehand, overlooked and underappreciated. 2 weeks after that brutal dinner, scrolling through my phone on a meager lunch break, I found them. Photos of my family, my parents, Anne, her boyfriend, in Hawaii. The palm trees, the impossibly blue water, the joyful smiles. No one had mentioned a vacation. No one had even thought to ask if I wanted to go. My phone call to my mother was met with a dismissive, "We didn't think you could get time off," followed by the sharp, familiar sting of her turning the conversation back to Anne's need to decompress. I hung up, a fresh wave of devastation washing over me, but it was just the prelude to the public humiliation to come. The family dinners, the whispered conversations, the silent understanding that I was a secondary character in the grand story of our family, it was all leading to one inevitable, agonizing conclusion. And as I stared at those pictures, a dark thought began to root. If they wouldn't see my worth, I would make them see my power. The quiet girl who saved lives in the dark would finally step into the light and show them exactly what they were missing. The months that followed became a slow-motion unraveling, a meticulous excavation of the lies my family had built. The dinner in Hawaii was merely the opening act. The public humiliation came next, an elegant, gilded cage for Anne's 25th birthday. It was a gala, held at a restaurant where appetizers cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I arrived straight from a 12-hour shift, the faint ghost of antiseptic clinging to my scrubs, my best dress feeling like a costume next to everyone else's designer gowns. The night was a long, slow toast to Anne's success, a series of speeches from my parents praising their successful daughter with such a bright future. The air in the room was thick with their pride, and I sat there, a ghost at the feast, listening to the echoes of their applause. A friend of my mother's, a woman named Mrs. Green, turned to me, a polite question in her eyes. "And what do you do, Mary? I know that Anne's in marketing, but I've lost track of your career." Before I could even begin to speak, my father cut in with a dismissive laugh. "Oh, Mary's still figuring things out. She works at the hospital, but Anne's the one with the real career. She's the one who's really making something of herself. My cheeks burned, a fire that had nothing to do with shame and everything to do with the slow, burning rage. I had just completed my nursing degree. I was working in the intensive care unit, holding people's lives in my hands every day. I made nearly double Anne's salary, a number they didn't even know existed. But all they could see was the social media persona they had helped craft for Anne, a fantasy they chose to believe over my reality. That night, the humiliation gave way to something colder and far more dangerous, a discovery. While helping my mother organize her bills, a stray folder caught my eye. It was filled with documents, each one a nail in the coffin of my family's lies, and student loan statements all marked paid in full. As I grabbed the papers, my hands trembling, I realized what had been happening for years. My parents had used the mortgage payments I had been making for 6 months, $2,900 a month, to pay off Anne's $40,000 in student debt. When I confronted my mother, she didn't even pretend to be ashamed. Anne needs to focus on her career growth, she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. You have a stable job, you can handle your own responsibilities, plus help the family. That's when I understood the true betrayal. I hadn't been helping with a mortgage, I had been funding Anne's entire life. My late nights and exhausting weekends, all of it had gone to building her dream while my own debt remained. But they didn't know I had been keeping records of everything. Every bank transfer, every payment, every receipt. It was all there, meticulously logged for tax purposes, never once imagining I would need it as evidence of their financial manipulation. I kept my discovery to myself. The quiet girl once again, but this time the silence was a weapon. The game was no longer about seeking their approval. It was about waiting for the perfect moment to prove my worth. The final act was coming, and I would be ready for it. I stopped making the mortgage payment, and my parents immediately demanded a family meeting. At dinner, they once again lectured me about my duty to the family. Once again, my mother told me, "You'll never be as good as your sister." I stood up, looked her in the eye, and said the words that made the whole room go silent. Then ask her to pay the bills. I laid a folder of documents on the table, proving that over the past 2 years I had paid $45,000 for my family. This included the mortgage and student loan, her credit card bills, and even her car payments. Anne's face went pale. She picked up the documents and saw her name in the payment memos. I explained that they wanted her to feel successful, not knowing that I was the one funding it all. I also revealed our salaries. Mine was $87,000, while hers was only $43,000. I took the folder and left. A month later, I moved and started a new job with a $118,000 salary. My parents' house went into foreclosure, and Anne's relationship fell apart when her boyfriend learned of their financial issues. Anne called and begged for help, but I was no longer their safety net. For the first time, their silence didn't hurt me, it freed me. I realized I didn't need their approval. My own self-respect was priceless.